What up? What up? What up? It is your man, Mr. Controversy. Yes, it is another edition of the top 10. And of course, I'm not doing this by myself. I am doing this with my guy, Mr. Danny Thompson. Danny, what's up, man?
It's Saturday, bro. We switching things up, and this is the most fun. It's one of the funnest, the best things I do all week. So I enjoy doing this with you every single week, though.
Nah, I definitely agree with you, man. Yeah, we had to switch it up, but it's cool. We'll go back to next Sunday. On next Sunday. But yeah, other than that, man, how's everything going?
You know, a busy day. Everything down here in Central Florida is shutting down early. It's bad when Walmart closes at 5 p.m. and your little girl's got a birthday party tomorrow, and you're trying to get everything done before 5 p.m. in curfew. Outside of that, it's been a crazy week. How about you?
Yeah, it's been crazy just with everything that's going on, like you said. I mean, staying healthy, staying safe, man, and keeping my spirits up. But other than
Oh
that,
yeah.
man, let's get into it, bro. All right, so this is the top 10 and top 10 quarterbacks of the 1990s. So we already did running backs. We've done wide receivers. Both were interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And this Saturday or today or tonight, however you want to call it, we are doing quarterbacks. This will be very interesting. So if you are a football head, you see this, please share it, share it, share it. All right. Okay. So how it goes, this case is first time watching it. Danny will pick first. I will go second. We'll go like that to the top till we get to our top five. Pause, look at comments or whatever. We'll put on the bottom below. You'll see the ticker in a second, but we'll put his bottom five and my bottom five. Then we'll go to the top five and the switch. I'll go first, and he will go second. So, all right, man, you ready to do this?
I mean, more ready than I'm going to be.
All right, so we're about to have some fun. Okay, so Danny, it's on you. Who is your first player you're going with?
The 1990s have always been. It was an interesting decade. We've talked about this on many of these shows before because of the fact of the decade switched from more of a non-passing league to more of a passing league, so the numbers can be kind of skewed. But one of the guys that started this change to more of a passing league was a guy that was the first overall pick back in 1993 draft, Drew Bledsoe. And the
Mm.
reason why I got, Drew, first off, had the killer arm. All right. We all saw this from Washington State. But remember the decade when he came in his first year in 93, 15 and 15. But if you think about it after that, he made 3 Pro Bowls in the 90s, led the league in completions twice, led the league in passing yards. All right. He led the Patriots to a Super Bowl. On top of that, he's one of a few quarterbacks in the league that finished in the top 5 in fourth quarter comebacks and also top 10 game winning drives in the whole decade. So Drew was clutch. Drew got victories, and at the same time, Drew had 5 seasons as a starting quarterback in the decade where his teams were 8-8 or better. So he won games as a starting quarterback. So I got Drew Brees at number 10. Drew Bledsoe number 10.
Okay. Um, I'm not mad at that. I'm definitely not mad at that. My number 10 quarterback, I am going with somebody, honestly, I think if he played more in the 90s, he would be higher on my list. But because he didn't, I can only go by what he did. And that is, hold on, do I still sound staticky?
I don't know if it's your end or my end.
Okay. I don't know. Y'all let me know. But other than that, just let me know. But I'm going with, can you understand me though?
Yeah.
Okay. I am going with Mark Brunell. So the
Okay.
reason why I got Mark Brunell, now look, Mark Brunell, he didn't play that long, man. He only played what 10 he only played I think 5 seasons in the 90s, right? Was drafted in
Hmm.
95, first overall pick for the was he the first overall pick? No, he wasn't. I'm sorry. He was traded to Jacksonville and went to Jacksonville and then he took this franchise. This was the expansion team and they went to the conference championship the second year. Then after that, then they went to the conference championship. I think it was '99.
Hmm.
So this is somebody who was very, very productive. This man had over 4,000 yards in one season. So that's just that alone. This is the '90s now. Remember, '90s. What you're going to see when we talk about this. This wasn't known for quarterbacks throwing over 4,000 yards. And like I said, he was explosive. He kind of put you in the mindset of Steve Young, somebody that could run the ball if he got in trouble, elusive, but yet still can throw. So I'm going with Mark Brunell.
Okay. That's a nice choice right there. So for my number 9, I'm gonna go with a guy that started off his career in the '90s with one team and had a resurrection season towards the end that was almost legendary, and that's Randall Cunningham. Listen, the ultimate weapon, QB Eagles on Tecmo Bowl, whatever you want to call Randall Cunningham. Randall put up numbers. When he was healthy, the Eagles were winning games. Anytime he played over 10 or more games, the Eagles were 500 or better in all those seasons.
Right.
10-6 a couple times. But after getting injured in '95, he retired in '96. Minnesota brought him back as a backup in '97, but '98, he led one of the greatest offenses of all time. That offense with, I don't know, it's just some guy, 2 Hall of Fame wide receivers, a guy named Chris Carter, and a rookie that put up numbers that were astronomical, and Randy Moss, and led that offense to a 15-1 season and literally fell one field goal away from making the Super Bowl because they lost to some team in Atlanta, with the Dirty Birds. But Randall Cunningham's season in 1998, 34 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,700 yards. But really it was how pretty he was when he did it. But also in the decade, like I said, he had success everywhere and he was the ultimate weapon. But when you have a resurrection story like that and you basically were retired and no one an afterthought, I got Randall at number 9. It was a tough one, but Randall's at 9 for me. Who you got, Raph?
My number 9 pick, I am going with shocker here. People forget about this guy. We talked about him last week. This guy was I always want to say he's kind of before his time, man. And he wasn't on a good team at that time in the '90s. In the '80s, they were pretty good. I think he might have had good numbers because they were playing from behind, but he was a pretty good quarterback. And that was my man Jim Everett.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm shocking everybody with the Jim Everett pick. The reason why I am going Jim Everett, you think about Jim Everett, this guy, like I said, he played on bad teams, but he had 5 seasons over 3,000 yards, including three seasons over 3,800 yards. Now, again, this is the '90s. This is not the late part of the '90s. This is the '90s where 4,000 yards was like, it was kind of rare. But he was one of the guys who was very productive, very consistent, and like I said, he didn't play on good teams, but he did produce. So I'm giving it to Jim Everett.
Okay. All right. So you can put some respect on his name because most folks still remember the Chris Everett Jim Rome incident.
Right. Yeah.
I'll give you that one.
Look, that was part of why he made my list too. No, go ahead.
I mean, that's still one of the greatest sports moments of all time.
Right.
All right. My number 8 was a guy that you already said earlier. I think I rated him a little bit higher as Mark Brunell of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Listen, a lot of the things you said earlier about Mark Brunell was completely correct. But but a couple other things on Mark Brunell was he was a winner. All right. After going to Jacksonville at 3-7 his first year with an expansion team, okay, they were 9-7, 9-5, 10-3, 13-2. Mark Brunell won games. He also, because he started later in the decade, was still in the top 10 in fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives for a guy that only started half the decade. Numbers are one thing, but remember, in 96, he led the NFL in passing yards with almost 4,400 yards that year. A consummate guy that always didn't turn the ball over. He had one season of over 10 picks as a starter. Every other season was under 10 interceptions. So a guy who wins, a guy who doesn't turn the ball over, and a guy that made Keenan McCardle and Jimmy Smith who they were, and also carried them, like you said, right next to the Super Bowl. Even though it was a limited amount of time, the winning percentage and all those other factors made Mark Brunell number 8 for me. Who you got?
All right, so number 8. This is where it starts getting tricky. This is where it starts getting to the point where you got to look at numbers, but how relevant they were. Look at their teams too, because some of that has a lot to play into it. So, my number 8 pick, quarterback, I should say, in the 1990s was none other than Troy Aikman.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. Troy Aikman, first the good stuff. Troy Aikman was that guy, man, where you knew what you were going to get. He was accurate. He wasn't selfish. He was a leader. But he did what they asked him to do. And what they asked him to do was give it to Emmitt, try not to turn the ball over. And if you do, I mean, you got a good defense behind you. And then give it to the playmaker, and that was it. The reason why I have him 8, I'll explain, is because, you know what? I'm going to save that for later. Because I know people, because I know that's one of the ones you're going to question me with, right? So,
okay.
Yeah, I think you're going to question me with that. So I'm going to tell you why we get to our top 5. I'll tell you why I went Aikman, and you will all understand. But Troy Aikman is my number 8 quarterback in the 90s.
Okay. All right. So we're going number 7 on this one. Listen, number 7 is a guy that, like you said, his numbers came in the early part of the decade. His offenses were basically named after him because he's the creator of the K gun. I have Jim Kelly. All right. Hey, listen, Jim Kelly put up numbers. He ran a great offense. Like I said, they got to the Super Bowl in the decade 3 times. He led the Bills to the Super Bowl, 3-time Pro Bowl in the decade. The one thing about Jim is that he was solid, but he knew how to win games. His teams were always competitive. He didn't have a single season that he played in the 90s that was not under 500. So he was consistent all throughout until 96 when he retired. I have him lower than others because even though his team got to the Super Bowl, there was also some numbers that were a little bit off, but he ran an offense that had multiple Hall of Famers on different skill positions on the offensive side of the ball, and he was the leader and also a Hall of Famer himself. So I got Jim Kelly here. I really want to see who your number 7 is. Who you got?
My number 7 is somebody you already talked about. Somebody you put on your team. He was you had him low, but that is my guy, Drew Bledsoe. So I'm gonna tell you why I have him at 7. When you think about this guy, Drew Bledsoe, come on, man. When he first, especially the first part of his career, the early part of his career, we thought we was about to get another Marino. You gotta remember this. His second year, I think he threw for over 4,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And
led the league.
Who can forget the game where him and Marino went back and forth in '94? Like, I think it was the first game of the season. It was like, okay, is this dude really this good? Is he for real? I know people get on him when he went to Dallas, but other than that, man, he reached 3,000 yards 6 years in a row. Again, this is not the same. This is not 2000s where they was throwing for 4,000. No, this
Mm-hmm.
is 3,000 was the benchmark. And like I said, every year in the 90s, except for his rookie year, he threw for 3,000. Is that your cat?
Yeah, Oliver is he's still upset about the Troy Aikman, so he is voicing displeasure on that one.
But yeah, man, I got Bledsoe at my number 7.
All
Quarterback.
right, so in the last part, the bottom part of the top five, the top 10. So my number 6 is a guy that put up humongous numbers in an offense that was based on the run and shoot, and that's my man Warren Moon. All right, listen, Warren Moon, I orchestrate one of the best offenses in the history of the NFL with different types of receivers everywhere. Um, you had Haywood Jeffries and Ernest Givens, you Drew Hill, not the singer, not the singing group, the wide receiver Drew Hill, in an offense that was tailor made. The reason why he wasn't as high as other players in the decade, especially when you get to other players, is that when you look at what he did win wise, he didn't really have that signature win compared to other people that are rated ahead of them or didn't have the numbers per se for the whole decade that other people I might have on this list in front of him. So Warren Moon is still one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I'll have him out the way. And I got him at number 6. Who you got?
All right, Danny, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. No static.
Okay, I can't hear you now.
You can't?
All
Can
right,
you hear me?
who else?
You muted me. I'm good.
All right, but you can hear me though, right?
I can hear you just fine.
You can't hear me, right?
You're good.
Okay. So my number,
6.
I'm at 6 right now.
Mm-hmm.
6 quarterback that I chose. No, I'm gonna shock some people, but I'm going with my man John Elway.
Ooh.
I'm going with Elway because Elway, when you think about Elway and what he did, Elway really he was more. I think he was a better quarterback towards the 80s, and in the 80s, late 80s going into the 90s. But in the 90s, he after maybe 90, 91, he really didn't have too many good teams until they got Mike Shanahan. And
Okay.
Elway, I mean, let's think. He never had over 30 touchdowns in his career. Now, Elway was clutch. He had Super Bowls, but when you think of Super Bowls, the Super Bowls came in because what? The fact that, I mean, he had Terrell Davis, and because of Terrell Davis, and like I said, a quarterback to not throw over 30 touchdowns, it's going to be hard to put him in the top 5. And Elway is one of my favorites. I love Elway. He was the first quarterback that I fell in love with. But I'm sorry, man. I have to go number 6 for Elway. Go ahead. What you got to say? What you got to say, Dave? Go ahead.
I guess I was muted. I was muted. So, I mean, listen, we'll discuss this in a few minutes, but okay. That's. I really want to see what this top 5 looking like. I really do.
Okay.
I'm excited
So,
now.
all right. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead. Some people came on late, so we're gonna put Danny's bottom 5. This is what Danny had. Bottom 5. Number 10, Drew Bledsoe. 9, Randall Cunningham. 8, Mark Brunell. 7, Jim Kelly. 6, Warren Moon. Um, my bottom 5 was, let me go down. It was, here we go. I have Mark Brunell number 10, Jim Everett number 9, Troy Aikman 8, Drew Bledsoe 7, John Elway number 6. We're gonna go to the comments. Please let me know if y'all still having trouble. Are you hearing me better now?
Oh no, you're way better. There's no static.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, y'all. So I have so this is when and I ain't implemented yet. I'm about to implement it soon. But this is what Vince said. Vincent Jackson said. Stop it. Because this is what he said before, like Elway.
Listen, Vincent, I'm saving mine for the end. All right, I understand.
Oh man! Oh, that is hilarious, bro.
Yeah, you're earning your nickname tonight, sir.
But I'm saying,
listen, we'll break. I want to hear your Harvard dissertation on this when we get to the end. I'm just waiting. That's why I'm just staying quiet.
Okay. All right, you're right. All right, so now we're gonna switch it up. I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
Danny's gonna go second. All right. So here we go. So my number 5 player or quarterback. The reason why I put Elway at 6, like I said, Elway never threw for over 30 touchdowns in his career, in his whole career. But someone who has and threw for more yards is Warren Moon. I couldn't believe that I don't know, man. Like Elway, I understand Elway is that good, and I get it, as far as his rings, whatever. But I just couldn't put him at. I couldn't put him there. As a matter of fact, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna switch it up. Can I switch it up?
You're switching numbers here?
Yeah, I'm gonna switch it up.
No, you can't call it audible. You call it audibles?
I'm gonna call it audible real quick.
All right, what's your audible?
Number 5. I'm gonna really be Mr. Controversy. I'm going with Dan Marino. Okay, I'm gonna put Dan Marino at number 5, and this is why. When we think about Dan Marino is that guy where you think quarterback in the 90s, you like, or I think quarterback period. Oh, Dan Marino's probably number 2 all time. But if you look at the stats, Dan Marino's best years were in the 80s. His sophomore year, that's when he threw for 5,084 yards, threw for 48 touchdowns. The year after that, he threw for, I think, over 4,000 yards again and like 38 touchdowns. Then he threw for 4,000 again later in the 80s. In the 90s, I think he threw for over one time. After that, you saw him throw for 3,000 consistently, but you didn't see the big numbers anymore. And part of that was maybe because of his team wasn't as good. The Mark brothers, Duper and Clayton, they weren't as, great as they were in the 80s. Jimmy Johnson came in the late 90s and he tried to put the running game over the on Miami and try to force that. So with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, so he just wasn't as good. Like the Marino we talk about was the 80s Marino, but in the 90s, as good as he's still top 5, but I just don't have him before anybody else.
All right, so you're saying that Dan Marino is now 5.
He's 5,
and we're saving Warren Moon. Got you.
Saving Warren Moon.
All right, so my number 5, I agree with you, is Dan Marino, but mine is for different reasons. All right, when you say Marino didn't do as well in the 90s numbers wise, I will give you that. But Marino's teams actually won in the 90s. He had one losing season that was under 500. Okay, his teams won games. Even counting the year in 93 where he played 5 games, he was 4-1 as a starter that year. Marino's teams won games. And yeah, he didn't have the 5,000 yards that you were looking for, but he hit 4,000 yards twice in the decade. Also in 94, he threw for almost 4,500 yards in 94, 93, 94. He put numbers up. He's also one of the top. I think he's in the top 10 in the decade, top 5 in the decade in passing yards. He put numbers up. Yeah. He put numbers on the board. Okay. This man threw to Irving Fry. Irving Fry was his number one target. You remember that at one point. So he didn't have the Clayton Duper thing, those games.
Hey, don't sleep on Irvin. Don't sleep on Irvin Fry though. But go ahead.
I'm saying, but it wasn't like the having the. Who else was on the team besides Irving Fryer?
Right. No, I agree.
But Keith Jackson, that was old Keith Jackson. But one thing about Marino is that, with the exception of 1999, which was his last season, he always was right around more touchdowns than interceptions, and he really didn't turn the ball over that much. I got Marino higher because him and Warren Moon did the same thing in the playoffs. Neither one won anything. Marino had better numbers. That's why I got Marino at 5 over Warren Moon. Who you got at 4?
At number 4, this was a tough one as well also, man, but I got to go with Jim Kelly. Shocked that you had Jim Kelly so low, but Jim Kelly, now when you think 90s football, you have to think of Jim Kelly because we saw him a lot. We saw him in the playoffs a lot. Like you stated earlier, K-Gun, he called his own plays. I think the fact that he had a Thurman Thomas kind of took away from the offense, which he was smart because he was calling the plays and he would give it to Thurman. He was the quarterback. He's a quarterback's quarterback. But when you talk about I need to throw the ball, even though he had a weird motion, crazy, ugly looking throwing motion, but he did that thing to that receiver, man, and he was lethal. And when that offense got going, he got going. Again, I didn't really go numbers for him, but just the way he played the game, one of the smartest quarterbacks to ever play the game. And
agreed.
He was 90s. I mean, when I think 90s, I think Jim Kelly because Buffalo Bills, let's be real. You will put them maybe top 3 because they didn't win a Super Bowl, but besides Dallas Cowboys, they were the team of the 90s. When you go to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row, come on, man, you got to be up there. So, and he led that team, so I have to go with Jim Kelly as my number 4 quarterback.
All right. Interesting. So my number 4 is a guy that you had a little bit lower on your list, and that's John Elway. So here's the thing with John Elway. John Elway won a Super Bowl first and foremost. All right. If 30 touchdowns is the gold standard, you're not going to get that with John Elway. But what you're going to get with John Elway is the fact that, first off, all the fourth quarter comebacks, he was in the top 5 in that category. Game-winning drives, top 5 in that category. But he was also in the top 10 among quarterbacks in quarterback rating, which is really high. In the same season, 93, he led the NFL in completions, attempts, and yards all in the same season. So what? He didn't throw 30 touchdowns in any season. He had 5 seasons where he threw over 25 touchdowns. So he had 4 seasons over 25, 5 at over 20. So Elway got the ball down the field. He also had 4 seasons in the decade where he had over 60% completion percentage. Let's put this in perspective. No quarterback that actually played enough time. I'm not counting Kurt Warner because that was completely different because it was a short period of time. Quarterbacks were completing 57 and 58% of their passes on a regular basis. Elway completed over 60. So the 60% that we see now was more like 50s, high 50s that day. And guess what? Elway was hitting at 60% a lot of the time of the decade. When you win a Super Bowl, that's kind of precedent more than numbers a lot of times. But Elway just didn't have numbers. Elway won Super Bowls, and his team consistently won. Remember, Elway had 1 season in the decade where his team did not win 7 or more games, and that was 7-7. His team was 500 or better every single season, and he had 4 seasons of 10 wins or more and a Super Bowl. So give me John Elway at number 4.
Okay, good argument. All right, my number 3 quarterback. This is where I put him. I did a play fake, play action, and I'm going Warren Moon, man. All right, so you say, why did you switch with Marino? Here's the thing. Like you said, they didn't have Super Bowls, so none of them got MVPs in the 90s. So we have to go numbers here. You got Moon had what 4 seasons over 4,000 yards, which was the most in the decade.
Okay.
He went over 30 touchdowns twice, and he did this with 2 teams now, with Houston Oilers in a run and shoot. Then he played in the West Coast offense and excelled in that. Had his best years in Minnesota. So you talk about a guy who played in 2 different offenses, and he was able to be great in them. How many quarterbacks can we say have done that? It's not too many to be great. And I'm talking about number wise, and except for maybe Favre when he did in Minnesota, which was crazy. But other than that, no, we hadn't seen anybody do that. So now the 90s now, four four seasons where he threw for over 4,000 yards, man. That's ridiculous in the 90s. And this is like early to mid 90s. You know what I'm saying? So Warren Moon was, and shout out, and that's my guy. Warren Moon was 55 years old at that point, and he's still throwing over 4,000 yards. So just think if he was 25, I'm just saying. So I got to go Warren Moon, man.
So you were saying that Warren Moon's George Blanda now. I'm talking about he's 55 years old in the mid-90s. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Look, Warren, my guy. Warren, I love him. Anytime, and this is really credit to him, but anytime you play in a Rose Bowl, and it was like kind of like black and white in a sense, like it was an 81, 80. Come on, man. Like,
listen,
you was in the guys in the
70s. listen, man. If you'd have brought the CFL into this, I would feel you even more. But since you didn't bring the CFL in, I can't count that one. I mean, this man was the league's. He was a Grey Cup MVP and the most valuable player in Canada, and a Pro Bowler in their version of the Pro Bowl in 2 countries.
Right.
Okay, I get it. Okay. All right. So we're at number 3.
Mm-hmm.
So my number 3 is a guy that, when you said earlier, a guy that symbolized the 90s, and you said Jim Kelly. Well, a guy that symbolized winning in the 90s was the guy that won the most Super Bowls in the 90s, and that's Troy Aikman. All right, so here's the thing with Troy Aikman. All right. Now, okay, yeah, he played with the Dallas Cowboys, but someone has to quarterback the ball. Okay. Someone had to make Michael Irvin a Hall of Famer. All right. Now, he can't teach you offensive line, but Troy Aikman knew how to win. When you win consecutively and as much as they did in the 90s, yeah, Emmitt Smith's in the backfield, but once again, the leader of the team is the quarterback. Troy Aikman had 5 consecutive seasons of 10 wins or more, and also the Cowboys were consistently in the playoffs every single year. He was a Pro Bowler from 91 to 96 straight. So you want to count numbers up? That's 6 years in a row that he was a Pro Bowler, consecutive. There's only 2 players that made more Pro Bowls than him in the decade. Okay, so consistency is there. Numbers is there. But one thing about Troy Aikman was the fact that he was accurate. Remember I mentioned earlier how quarterbacks were like hitting around 57, 58%? Troy Aikman hit 60%, 63% or more of his passes, and every single year he made the Pro Bowl. All that run was all over 63% completion percentage. So he was getting the ball to his receivers. You can have the offensive line all you want to, but you still can be a bad quarterback and get the ball over. Aikman barely turned the ball over. He also had the lowest interception percentage among starters consistently throughout the decade. So if you look at base numbers, he didn't turn the ball over. Dallas won games. Dallas won Super Bowls. So the leader, how we consider Roger Staubach great because he led teams to the Super Bowl, is the same reason why Troy Aikman's great, because guess what? He won big games. So I got Aikman at number 3. Number 3.
All right. We'll get to that later. Number 2, quarterback. This is hard, man. Bears fans, just forgive me for this. Okay, I almost want to throw up, but no time to be. I said I wasn't going to be biased this time. My number 2 quarterback goes to Steve Young, man. And I say it like that, you'll see why. But Steve Young, this is my favorite quarterback of all time. And like I said, you see, I'm not being biased. I don't think the 90s was ready for a quarterback like this. We saw how good Randall Cunningham was. as far as running the ball. But then
Mm-hmm.
we would see a Dan Marino, as far as completion rate, completion percentage, and being able, or even a Montana. We saw that, but we never seen the two combined. And Young outran Randall Cunningham, now due to injuries, but also he was more accurate than any other quarterback. Not only was he accurate, but he won 2 MVPs that year, finally got a Super Bowl. And again, this man was playing with Montana on his back, 8 monkeys on his back. Everybody wanted Montana instead of him. And you know how hard that had to be, but he still went out every year. He could have won 3 MVPs as far as I'm concerned. And remember, he led the league in quarterback rating. And when he retired, he was the highest quarterback rated quarterback in the NFL. So I got to go with Steve Young as my number 2 quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my number 2 quarterback, we're going to agree on this one. Steve Young's my number 2 quarterback. And the reason behind that, a lot of the same things you said. Steve Young's the only quarterback in the entire league that in the entire decade, guys that played consistently throughout the league not to throw 100 interceptions. Right. Like you say, he didn't turn the ball over. He only had 80 interceptions in the entire decade. You said he was accurate. He was. 5 seasons over. We led the league in completion percentage. Also led the league in touchdown passes 4 times. He also was the MVP of the league and also won the Super Bowl. He pretty much hit every single accolade that you can ask for a starting quarterback in the decade. And also, like you said, he was the weapon that the NFL didn't even know how to use. On top of that, you actually won 2 MVPs, excuse me. But he was a weapon that the NFL didn't know how to use at the time. And the crazy part about it is we talk about this transition. He was good before they started throwing. He was even better after they started throwing.
Right.
So I don't care if you say about Jerry Rice. Yeah, you had Jerry Rice and you had all those Ricky Waters. You had the West Coast offense.
Mm-hmm.
Troy Aikman had Michael Irvin, Jay Novacek, Emmitt Smith in that offensive line. So you really can't say talent is talent. Steve Young was just he exceeded everybody's expectations. It's just the only thing is that the one thing about Steve Young is that he didn't play the entire decade. Remember, his last season in 99 was cut short. And like you said, he stepped in for Joe Montana after Montana won the MVP in 90. So he didn't play the full decade. But listen, Steve Young was phenomenal. It's like he started a trend for left-hand quarterbacks and also quarterbacks that are mobile. So, I got to give Steve Young, and, he was the highest rate, like you said, highest rate passer in the decade. And it's, I can't disagree with that number 2. I mean, because you could argue for even being number 1 as well.
All right. And my number 1, it goes to man. It goes to this guy, as y'all see right here, Brett Favre, man. Brett Favre I hated him because he was the Bears. He was a Bears killer. We hated Brett Favre. I hated him. But he's one of them quarterbacks that after it's over with, I could look back and say, like, man, this dude, he was, he gets blamed because he throw interceptions, but just the way he played football to me was he didn't play like a quarterback as far as how he went about the game, but he was a quarterback. He threw touchdowns. He took chances. He was a gunslinger. He was the guy that when you saw him about to get in trouble, he'd find some way to escape and make a spectacular play. And you got to think about this. This is a guy that lost a Sterling Sharp early in his career. We talked about that last week. Just think if Sterling would have played, his career like he should have, if it wasn't for injuries, it would have been scary. And again, this guy was somebody that you couldn't hold down. You know what I'm saying? Then he was tough. So honestly, if you weren't a Bears fan, I could see why certain people love Favre, because Favre was everything you want in a quarterback. Tough, love football, gunslinger, strong arm. That was that Joker Brett Favre.
You said this hurts you. This hurts me more than it hurts you because we drafted him in Atlanta. As the Falcons drafted Brett Favre, and we decided to trade him to the Green Bay Packers. I think if it was Steve Broussard, I think it was, or Tony Smith. It was one of the two running backs that Brett Favre, I think, ran more than they did in the entire NFL career. But listen, okay, people say, okay, well, Steve Young didn't throw interceptions and Brett Favre did. All right, okay, I get it. The interception ratio from Favre to Steve Young was like almost 50 to 60. It was a huge difference. Like, okay, so Brett Favre was a gunslinger, but think about a quarterback that has an arm like Brett Favre. Nowadays, you're talking Patrick Mahomes, okay, who was a gunslinger, a guy that would throw the ball anywhere. You take any combination of quarterbacks like that in the league, Ben Roethlisberger, guys who take chances. Roethlisberger take chances now. Think about that with the fact of an arm and the ability to make everybody else around them better. Like you said, he started his career with Sterling Sharp. And the crazy part is Favre, his first 2 years, didn't even hit 20 touchdown passes. Yeah. It was in year 3 as a starter where he hit 30 touchdown passes. He had 5 consecutive seasons over 30 touchdown passes. Led the league in passing touchdowns 3 times. Led league completions. But the most important stat is, here's the thing. He won 3 consecutive MVP trophies in a row. You name one player that can win back-to-back. He did it 3 times in a row. That's how dominant Brett Favre was in the league. He got his Super Bowl. But when you said Young had 2 MVPs, Favre did it 3 consecutive years in a row. Yeah, he wasn't the most accurate. And yeah, like I said, he did throw interceptions right then and there. But man, that 99-yard touchdown pass he had back in 95 is still one of the most impressive passes I have seen in the league. And like I said, Brett Favre is a guy that, to be honest with you, as a starting quarterback in the decade, never had a losing season. Not one. How can you go against that? I don't care about the interception, so I'm taking Brett Favre number 1.
All right. So those are our picks. I'm about to put Danny's top 5 up. Now, Danny, I know you want to question me. What you got to question, bro?
All right, bro. So listen, it's all love. It's all love here, but some of the guys on the list. Let's look at this list again to make sure I can pick the numbers out. Because, all right, who was your bottom 5 again?
My bottom 5 was actually. You know what? We're gonna put them up now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put them up.
I'm gonna put mine up first, as you asked me. It was Mark Brunell, number 10, Jim Everett, 9, Troy Aikman, 8.
All right, we're gonna stop you before you even continue, because you said you had a Harvard explanation on why Troy Aikman's number 8. I got time for this one.
Okay, so you talked about he won Super Bowls. You're right, he won Super Bowls, but this was a team that this was that same team, probably Trent Dilfer. You know how Dilfer won with Baltimore? He could have won with the Dallas Cowboys. Think about it. Again, we talked about Emmitt, the greatest line in football, with, at that time, number 2 running back in the NFL. You have Michael Irvin. You have Alvin Harper. Great defense. What does Aikman need to do? And now again, like I stated, Aikman did what he was asked to do. I think he played on another team, he would have had better numbers. But remember, we talk about how bad Jay Cutler was. This man threw more interceptions than Jay Cutler in his career. He threw more interceptions than Jay Cutler in his career. Okay, then this guy has never, ever threw for 20 touchdowns in a season. How you gonna put him top 5?
No, he did. He did in 92. He had 23 in 92.
Man, come on. What
He had 23 in 92.
One season.
You just say he didn't. I'm just telling you he did.
One season in 92. And you getting excited over one season. That's my point. One season? Nah, listen, bro. You can't be top. That proves my point that this man did this, and it was a product of that system, and that's how I like him getting to the Hall of Fame, and he'll tell you that I know Super Bowls count, but nah, bro, like you can't. Like I said, he was a good quarterback, and then you talked about 63%, right? That he threw. When Irvin was gone, it dropped to 59% after that. He didn't get over 59. You can't get higher than that on my list.
Okay. Now, Aikman's defense. Who won more playoff games in the decade than Troy Aikman?
Because I just proved to you why he had that. You had Emmitt Smith, the best big game running back in NFL history. You want a running back, and I hate Emmitt Smith as far as a player. I hated him. But big game, I'm going Emmitt Smith because he's going to show out.
Listen, but when the game is on the line, and you need somebody to win a game for you, and you need a quarterback, it does not matter. If you go 11-4 in the playoffs as a starter in the whole entire decade, you win 3 Super Bowls, and guess what? If you're a game manager, you're a game manager. But what was Tom Brady most of his career? He was a game manager.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. If it was only a few years where we said he's game manager.
But guess what though? He was still a game manager that won Super Bowls. So what's the difference?
Because in them years when they needed Tom Brady, he came in and he won the game for him. We hadn't seen Aikman. Now I give you this: Aikman played great in the first Super Bowl they won against the the Buffalo Bills. He played great in that. But other than that, no. Brady won Super Bowls. Brady won playoff games. We seen Brady had to bring a team back. We seen him. Aikman threw interceptions his whole career. Aikman threw interceptions in the playoffs. But he would throw 19 times a game? Because why? Because you had Emmitt Smith. Now, is that his fault that we didn't see what he could do? I'm just saying he's a product of that team. That's it. That's all. That's why he's not 6'5", 4, 3, 2. You can't do that when you only throw for over 20 touchdowns in 1 year in the 90s. Isn't that the 80s? Nah, bro.
I just got one question for you. How many Super Bowls happened in the entire decade of the 90s? How many years in a decade?
How many who? Say it again.
How many years are in a decade?
Okay, you got 10. So what?
Okay.
So what? I don't get what you're saying. What?
Hold on. How many times Dallas Cowboys get to the Super Bowl in the decade?
3.
Okay. Who was the quarterback for all 3 Super Bowls those years?
It could have been Dilfer. That's my point.
No. Answer the question. Don't tap this around. Don't tap dance for the question. I'm asking you still.
I said it earlier, and when I was talking about it, I said it earlier. Hold on. I said it earlier, but again, Super Bowls don't get you to number 5. No, because if that's the case, then you can put Dilfer in the top 5 then. No, you can't do that.
No, I just asked a simple question.
I told you that.
I'm just saying. Okay, so here's my point. There's 10 years in the decade. The Cowboys made the Super Bowl 3 times.
The Cowboys made the Super Bowl. Right, the Cowboys.
Listen now.
Cowboys,
Okay. The Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls in the decade.
Right.
Troy Aikman starting quarterback in all 3 of them. So that means Troy Aikman was the leader of a team that won 30% of all of the championships in the decade.
Let me say, you said one thing. You said it was 1 year, right? He only had over 20 touchdowns, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
1 year. Okay. Right. Okay.
Listen.
Okay.
Hey, winning matters.
Okay.
And when it's different between winning and you're a role player and winning when you're a Pro Bowl player. When you're an all-star. Troy Aikman was an all-star every one of those years he was a Super Bowl guy.
Okay,
we make the All-Star team or the Pro Bowl team
Pro Bowl.
6 consecutive years in a row.
So why did he make the Pro Bowl team? Then he went. Let's go through his numbers. 91 when he made the Pro Bowl. How many touchdowns he threw? 11. How many interceptions he had? 10. In 92, he had 23 touchdowns, 14. I'll give him that. In 93, 15 touchdown passes. In 94, 13 touchdown passes. In 95, 16. In 96, 12. Come on, man. You making a Pro Bowl with 12 touchdowns, 10 interceptions?
Hey, listen, key word.
Look, 96, he had 12 touchdown passes and 13 interceptions. But you make the Pro Bowl? I bet not ever hear nobody talk about my guy Trubisky talking about, he was a selected Pro Bowl because you bet not say nothing about it. You a Dallas fan? Oh my God, do not let me feel you.
All I'm saying is this. Troy Aikman made the second most Pro Bowls of anybody in the decade.
Oh my God.
The only people ahead of him were Warren Moon and Brett Favre.
So do you think he should have made the Pro Bowls them years?
Listen, I don't do
that. Answer the question. I asked you a question.
I gotta look at the numbers some of those years. Okay. 96, okay. 96. All right, listen. I don't know who the hell was voting those years. Listen, I'm just saying, at the end of the day, he got 6 Pro Bowls and 3 Super Bowls.
That's all you see, right? All right. So one thing I questioned.
Okay.
Question about yours.
Besides Troy Aikman, we'll continue.
All right, let me go to your top. I'm gonna go to your top 5 too. One, honestly, man, I was just shocked that you put Jim Kelly at number 7.
Okay.
I didn't understand. I was kind of shocked. But Randall Cunningham making a list.
Okay.
You gotta explain that one to me.
So when you think about this, Randall Cunningham, like you mentioned before, Warren Moon, mastering 2 offenses. All right. Randall Cunningham, like we mentioned, we talked about this before, the transition of quarterbacks in the entire decade from being much more of a run happier, balanced offenses to an offense that was throwing the football on a regular basis. Remember, Randall Cunningham was the beginning of what scrambling quarterbacks was. Now, people will say a lot of his damage came in the 80s, but really, he had a tremendous year in 1990 where he threw 30 touchdowns and 13 interceptions that year. 91, he got hurt. All right. But when he got back in 92, the Eagles were 10-5. 19 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, about 3,000 yards. He missed 1 game. Now, 93, he got hurt again. All right. But it seems like every time Randall has setback, he always had to come up the next year. Because you go back to 94 when he was healthy again, he threw for 3,200 yards. He threw for 16 touchdowns that year. He resurrected his career again. Then for a guy to come back, literally, he was hurt. He retired. They dragged him off the streets. And then to turn in not just a Pro Bowl season, he was first team All-Pro at 35 years old, and people thought he was done. He wasn't even scrambling Randall anymore. He was throwing deep balls, Randall. Okay? It was video game like Randall Cunningham back in 1998, where he became, I think it was comeback player of the year in 98 as well, too. All right. It was like, he was the comeback player in 92, but 98 was a resurrection year for him. All right. So I have him up there because you got to understand, in the decade, he threw over 100 touchdowns in the decade. All right. And he missed significant time. But the fact of he always kept rebuilding himself and always turned out being good. Like I said, that's the reason why I have him at number 9. I know you like Jim Everett.
But hold on, wait, no, wait. But I hear you. But every time he came back up, then he went back down again. This dude only had 4 good seasons in the 90s, and you can say it's hurt, but I can't. Now you're starting to be injury prone, dog. You know what I'm saying? You jumped on me you jumped on Troy Aikman. All right, for numbers. All I'm saying is Randall had success throughout the decade, and like I said, only 4 seasons. He only had 4 good seasons in a decade.
And isn't that what Jim Everett had in the decade too?
No, Jim Everett had more than 4. That's why I picked him. Like I said, because I looked at Randall.
And when Randall's teams won too, though. When Randall was on the field, his teams did win. That's another thing. His teams won when he was on the field. You know, it was harder to choose the back end, like I
Mhm.
said, for me at number for 8, 9, and 10 was a little bit more difficult. Because like I said, with Randall, that 98 season, that should have been his Super Bowl season. All right.
Right.
Well, no, and I'm a Falcons fan. Like you're a Bears fan, I'm a Falcons fan. All right. And yes, Atlanta was 14-2 that year. Yeah, Jamal Anderson was dirty birding all over the entire league. But let's be honest, that Super Bowl was Minnesota and Denver. That's what it should have been.
All right.
Like there was no doubt about it. Randall Cunningham throwing bombs all year with Randy Moss leaping over wide receivers. He turned Jake. They could have had 3 Pro Bowl receivers that year.
Right.
So, and like I said, when you make first team All Pro, that does mean a lot to me. So that has him over everybody else.
So Darrell Wilson said, talking about Troy Aikman, he made it off Cowboys' popularity. Thank you.
Listen. Yao Ming was an 8-time All-Star too. So
Thank you. I don't know, man. Like I said, the Jim Kelly, I still didn't understand number 7. I thought that was kind of high.
So the kind of low part in Jim Kelly is, listen, you talk about numbers. Yeah, the K gun was, like I said, the offense was built around him, and the Buffalo Bills did get to Super Bowls. Okay, that's something you can never take away. But we talk about, you talked about Troy Aikman, and it comes to how did Troy Aikman get to be X, Y, and Z, and he made the Pro Bowl with 12 touchdowns and 13 interceptions, which is pretty hilarious, by the way. But if you look at Jim Kelly's numbers throughout the decades, last year was 12 touchdowns and 14 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. But you want to talk about somebody who gave the ball away. Jim Kelly had, with the exception of 1990, Raphael, he threw 17 or more interceptions 5 times in the decade, and his career ended in 96. You talk about somebody who gave the ball away.
Yeah.
Okay. Give the ball away. Listen, he throws 17 interceptions this decade. They're questioning his job in the first place.
Right.
All right. And remember, you're talking about how Troy Aikman didn't throw all these touchdown passes. There were years where Jim Kelly, well, let's see, he had 1 year where he had more interceptions than touchdowns. He had 1 year where he was 50-50. And his 50-50 year was 93 when they went 12-4. So you want to talk about interception to touchdown ratio? You go 12-4 with 18-18. All right, Aikman was 10-6 with 12-13. 18-18 ain't that much better.
Hey, look, like I told you, when I spoke of Jim Kelly, I said it was more of 90s. Because remember, that's why I said I'm not mentioning stats. And he had good stats. But when you think of the 90s, you thought K-Gun. This was the new offense.
But remember, though, you act like the K-Gun didn't have weapons either.
No, they did. But I'm just saying, he called plays. He didn't throw as much. He gave the ball to Thurman. And that's why I said he was one of the smartest quarterbacks, probably top 5 smart quarterbacks and players in the game.
Raphael, hold on. You say he didn't throw the ball? If you look at Kelly's numbers, he threw the ball 450 times or more.
But look at some of them
5 times in a decade.
Look at some of them seasons when he threw the ball, and I'm talking about when they got to the goal line. What did he usually do? Give it to Thurman. And this is the guy that was calling plays. This is the guy that was calling plays. No, listen. You talking about 3rd and 8, and what he do? Give it to Thurman. And that's why I told you, smart. You talking about somebody. That's why I love John Elway, because these guys are call plays now. These ain't nobody that hearing people in their ear and
that's something exists.
Jim Kelly, Elway, they were calling plays. And like I said it with Elway. Elway didn't throw the ball like he should have. But Elway was calling plays back then with Dan Reeves. And he saw, hey, let's run the ball. And that's why I said you got to give him credit for that. I mean, because he had weapons, like you said. He did have weapons.
But my thing is also at the same time, you can't be in the top 5. And here's the part that's interesting to me. You can't be in the top 5 in the decade when your interception ratio, like you said, the number of interceptions compared to completed passes is over 4%. And he did that multiple years.
You got Aikman at number 3.
Listen, but here's my thing. But when you look at the number, it's interception percentage. Aikman's interception percentage was nowhere near with Jim Kelly's interception.
Right, because he didn't throw the ball. No.
No.
When you compare it to touchdowns, when you have just as many First, forget that. When you have you have more interceptions than Jake Cutler, you can't beat number 3.
How many interceptions do you think Jim Kelly threw in the decade too?
He got more touchdowns than Aikman. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Hold on. Let's look that one up, sir. But continue. I digress.
Okay. And I'm saying
actually, okay, if you want to say that, it was 156 to 149. It was 7 more touchdowns.
And how many years did he play in the 90s? Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've won this. I told you this. Aikman sucked. Let's be real. He sucked. I'm sorry. He's garbage. Eggman was garbage. That's what you call garbage. The garbage watch. Garbage watch. Hey, like I said, my thing is for Jim Kelly to have 49, 7 more touchdowns than Eggman, and Jim Kelly didn't play after 96 season, I think. And Aikman played every year in the decade. Come on, dog. I'm just saying.
Listen. Hey, money talks and so do championships. That's all I'm saying. When you're the leader of the team, you're the leader. I mean, and the thing is, if he was that trash of a quarterback, he wouldn't have been around that long. You can say that, that Trent Dilfer, won a Super Bowl. But the thing is, Dilfer didn't have sustainable success. Troy Aikman had sustainable success.
Ugh.
Listen, okay, so
again, if Dilfer had the same team, yes, he would have had the success.
Did that defense go away anytime soon?
Who?
Did the Baltimore defense go away after they won that Super Bowl?
He only played 1 year. That was it.
My question was, you said, now anybody can court, but Trent Dilfer didn't get back to the Super Bowl the next year.
He didn't play the next year. You're talking about remember Elvis Gerback played the next year. You're talking about a defense.
They upgraded Trent Dilfer to Elvis Gerback.
Danny, you're talking about a defense. I'm talking about an entire team. The Dallas Cowboys had the best team in the 90s by far. You had the best defense. You had the best offensive lineman. You had a second best running back. You had a top 3 wide receiver. You had a top 2 tight end. You probably had a top 3 tight end. I'll say top 2. And then come on, man.
Listen, you can't blame the man for being around tight. I'm not a Cowboys fan.
But look, we gotta go. But this was hard. This was hard. It was the quarterbacks was probably the hardest one because you can't just look. You had a lot to cover, like you said, accolades with Super Bowls. That's how we judge quarterbacks. But it clutch. You can't say a running back is clutch that many. It's hard to say that. You can. I mean, it can be, but it's hard to gauge that. Whereas quarterbacks, if you clutch or you not, are you a leader? So it especially the back 6, 5 was hard. So
I think really outside of the top 2, the top 2 were really, easy. I don't think they were debate. The only thing is debatable who the number 1 quarterback is because like the main difference was between the two, besides the extra MVP award, because both won Super Bowls, was the fact of you can say that Young might have been a better quarterback because he didn't turn the ball over as much as Favre, but Favre put points on the board on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Like with Brett Favre, you knew you were in the game no matter what. He might have thrown 2 or 3 interceptions, but if he's got that ball in his hands at the end of the game, you already know.
Yeah, man, you're right, and that's how it was, man. That was Favre. That was that, and that was the 90s. Those type of quarterbacks. It was good. Those were the days. It's about to get harder because now we're moving into the 2000s. We're gonna start with the running backs again. Yes. So this is going to be more fun. It's going to be more fun. But before we go, go ahead.
I got one question for you. Who'd you have a hard time leaving off the list?
Nobody. It was hard trying to fit them last 2. I didn't have nobody, so it wasn't.
I thought about Jeff George.
I thought about him, but
his team's never won anything. Yeah,
so
he ain't made no Pro Bowls, he ain't made no playoffs. So can't have him on the list.
Right.
Empty
stats.
All
right, man. Any last words before we go?
This is always fun. Thank you. Shout outs to everybody that was in the chat room. And shout outs to my little girl tomorrow. She's gonna be 7 tomorrow. So it's not even my day. My birthday was Monday, so my birthday didn't exist because hers is on Sunday. So
Cool.
big shout outs to her, and like I said, this is fun doing this every single week with you because we get to go back and forth, and we just know that we gonna have to powwow a little bit more of this on another night, but it's fun.
Right. Yes, sir. Hey, everybody be safe, man. Thanks for the support. Stay healthy. Keep your spirits up and get ready for this change because it's about to be one, man. We're already in the midst of a change. But other than that, it's Mr. Controversies, Danny Thompson. Will you miss me? I'm out. Peace.